Hello everybody, this is Sci-Fi Read Aloud, part 32. We're going to continue with the second half of chapter 17 today. At 3 o'clock on the morning of the 26th of November, the Nautilus crossed the Tropic of Cancer at 172 degrees longitude. On the 27th instant, it sighted the Sandwich Islands, where Cook died, February 14th, 1779. We had then gone 4,860 leagues from our starting point. In the morning, when I went on the platform, I saw, 2 miles to windward, Hawaii, the largest of the 7 islands that formed the group. I saw clearly the cultivated ranges and the several mountain chains that run parallel with the side, and the volcanoes that overtop Mauna Rea, which rise 5,000 yards above the level of the sea. Besides other things the net brought up were several flabellulae and graceful polypi that are peculiar to that part of the ocean. The direction of the Nautilus was still to the southeast. We crossed the equator December 1st in 142 degrees longitude, and on the 4th of the same month, after crossing rapidly and without anything particular occurring, we sighted the Marquesas group. I saw 3 miles off at 8 degrees 57 hours latitude and 139 degrees 32 hours west longitude, Martin's Peak in Nokahiva, the largest of the group that belongs to France. I only saw the wooded mountains against the horizon because Captain Nemo did not wish to bring the ship to the wind. There the nets brought up beautiful specimens of fish. Coraphines with azure fins and tails like gold, the flesh of which is unrivaled. Halogamonoses, nearly destitute of scales, but of exquisite flavor. Osteriscents, with bony jaws and yellow-tinged thazards, as good as bonitos, all fish that would be of use to us. After leaving these charming islands, protected by the French flag, from the 4th to the 11th of December, the Nautilus sailed over about 2,000 miles. This navigation was remarkable for the meeting with an immense shoal of calmars, near neighbors to the Cuttle. The French fishermen call them hornets. They belong to the cephalopod class and to the dibrachial family that comprehends the Cuttles and the Argonauts. These animals were particularly studied by students of antiquity, and they furnished numerous metaphors to the popular orators, as well as excellent dishes for the tables of the rich citizens, if one can believe Athenaeus, the Greek doctor, who lived before Galen. It was during the night of the 9th or 10th of December that the Nautilus came across a shoal of mollusks that are peculiarly nocturnal. One could count them by millions. They emigrate from the temperate to the warmer zones, following the track of herrings and sardines. We watch them through the thick crystal panes, swimming down the wind with great rapidity, moving by means of their locomotive tube, pursuing fish and mollusks, eating the little ones, eaten by the big ones, and tossing about in indescribable confusion like the 10 arms that nature has placed on their heads like a crest of pneumatic serpents. The Nautilus, in spite of its speed, sailed for several hours in the midst of these animals, and its nets brought in an enormous quantity, among which I recognized the species that D'Orbigny classed for the Pacific. One saw, while crossing, that the sea displays the most wonderful sights. They were in endless variety. The scene changed continually, and we were called upon not only to contemplate the works of the Creator in the midst of this liquid element, but to penetrate the awful mysteries of the ocean. During the daytime of the 11th of December, I was busy reading in the large drawing room. Ned Land and Conseil watched the luminous water through the half-open panels. The Nautilus was immovable. While its reservoirs were filled, it kept at a depth of 1,000 yards, a region rarely visited in the ocean, and in which large fish were seldom seen. I was then reading a charming book by Jean Massé, The Slaves of the Stomach, and I was learning some valuable lessons from it when Conseil interrupted me. "Will master come here a moment?" he said in a curious voice. "What is the matter, Conseil?" I want master to look. I rose, went and leaned on my elbows before the panes, and watched. In a full electric light, an enormous black mass, quite immovable, was suspended in the midst of the waters. I watched it attentively, seeking to find out the nature of this gigantic cetacean. But a sudden thought crossed my mind. "A vessel," I said, half aloud. "Yes," replied the Canadian, "a disabled ship that has sunk perpendicularly." Ned Land was right. We were close to a vessel of which the tattered shrouds still hung from their chains. The keel seemed to be in good order, and it had been wrecked in at most some few hours. 3 stumps of masts, broken off about 2 feet above the bridge, showed that the vessel had had to sacrifice its masts, but, lying on its side, it had filled and it was heeling over to port. This skeleton of what once had been was a sad spectacle as it lay lost under the waves, but sadder still was the sight of the bridge where some corpses, bound with ropes, were still lying. I counted 5. 4 men, one of whom was standing at the helm, and a woman standing by the poop holding an infant in her arms. She was quite young. I could distinguish her features, which the water had not decomposed, by the brilliant light from the Nautilus. In one despairing effort, she had raised her infant above her head, poor little thing, whose arms encircled his mother's neck. The attitude of the 4 sailors was frightful, distorted as they were by their convulsive movements, while making a last effort to free themselves from the cords that bound them to the vessel. The steersman alone, calm, with a grave, clear face, his gray hair glued to his forehead, and his hand clutching the wheel of the helm, seemed even then to be guiding the 3 broken masts through the depths of the ocean. What a scene! We were dumb. Our hearts beat fast before this shipwreck, taken as it were from life and photographed in its last moments. And I saw already, coming toward it with hungry eyes, enormous sharks attracted by the human flesh. However, the Nautilus, turning, went round the submerged vessel, and in one instant I read on the stern, "The Florida, Sunderland." Thank you, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow for the start of chapter 18.